I had a holy shit moment where we built this metaverse thing, and the guy's like, "Yeah, it's X, if ETH." I'm like, "Really?" Yeah, I mean, that's one of the unique things is we all start somewhere on our journey, and then the more time you spend, the bigger it is.
Right.
Until you can't see anything else.
Right.
And it's weird because people outside who haven't really taken that time, the kind of 1,000 hours you need to do to get involved, don't get it. And it sounds like this weird world, but as you say, it breaks down into so many different areas that are impacting every single part of both the financial system, our social lives, our economic lives, everything. Gone through the financial crisis in 2008, kind of predicted it, saw how bad it got. Then I was living in Spain when we almost lost the banking system in Europe, and Cyprus bailed in the banks and all of this. And I thought, okay, this debt problem is a huge issue. So I started going around the world looking to set up the world's safest bank. Thinking, can I find a bank that has no leverage, just holds US treasuries or whatever? And then a friend of mine tapped me on the shoulder back in 2012 and said, what about Bitcoin? And I noticed it was on my radar screen. I probably wrote the first macro strategy paper on Bitcoin in 2013, comparing it to gold, using the above ground supply of gold and the known reserves of gold, backed it out into Bitcoin and said, well, if gold's at $1,300, Bitcoin's worth $1 million. And the difference between here and there was adoption. And so I first invested when it was at 200 back in 2013, saying, this is the best risk reward I've ever seen in my entire lifetime, and it's continued to play out. I started with Bitcoin for the reasons that you talked about, because I can see the path to it. I want to go talk through that path in a bit. But for me, it became, once I understood network adoption models, it then just made it easier. I didn't have to worry about all this other shit. I just needed to worry about, okay, this is a broad number of technologies and solutions and applications, and all we need to worry about is actually what's getting real network adoption and what's not. And it just stops being a filter of everybody saying to you, oh, have you looked at this one? This is amazing. I'm like, I've no idea. I mean, I can't tell. I'm not competent enough. It's impossible to do it. So then it's like, okay, you need to have a guideline. If you think it's a massive technology based around adoption, then kind of step back, finds it easier, as opposed to getting in the weeds. So talk me through how we get your mental model of how we get from where we are today with Bitcoin, which is, the dominant asset in the space, with a very robust network, but with less applications layer stuff right now than others. But this application of money, which is, in TAM terms, is gigantic. Also, I'm open to the fact that what we think of as money splits. So I've thought of Bitcoin as the collateral layer, because unlike collateral, like US treasuries are the world's collateral right now. It's the epicenter of all collateral. Now, what's bizarre about it is in a crisis, more of them get created. And over time, they're therefore worth less. So being a collateral owner is, you're not really benefiting because interest rates get cut as well. But with an asset like Bitcoin, of which you can't create more of, if that is the collateral layer, then all that happens in a crisis is you get paid more to lend somebody your collateral. So the interest rates go up, which is kind of counterintuitive to the world that we currently live in. But that's how collateral should work, because then it disincentivizes leverage over time. So I've thought about that element and thought, okay, that works for me. I'm not sure that it needs to be a medium of exchange in the traditional sense. And if I look at the internet right now, if there is a competitor to medium of exchange, it's Ethereum. I mean, everything is priced in Ethereum. I mean, I've paid architects building a metaverse, that was in Ethereum. You buy NFTs, it's in Ethereum. You use DeFi, it's usually in Ethereum. So, and I don't have an issue with that because I don't think of them necessarily as competition, which is something I found the world gets so hung up on, is one thing versus another. I'm like,
definitely.
No. If you're going to architect an entirely new financial system from scratch and an internet of value, don't look backwards. what the past looked like and expect us to rebuild that. Money can now be segregated down into different functions. What I think of as the metaverse in 20 or 30 years' time is just the increasing digitalization of the world. So if we think about internet of value, then, could Ethereum be the transactional currency of that? The denominator? Probably. Does that, or possibly I should use, probably the wrong term, possibly. What role does Bitcoin have in that? Well, it currently doesn't play much of a role in that ecosystem. But again, I don't think it matters because it has its own role, you said at the beginning. And these roles will blend and merge. And I think they coexist. The significance of legally being allowed to use it within a country, i.e. it's not banned, means that I can pay my taxes in Bitcoin by just selling my Bitcoin and buying my pesos or whatever the local currency is. So I can denominate my own savings in whatever I need. In fact, I wouldn't want to spend my Bitcoin. I mean, I've never spent any of it in my life. And so I'm just not sure that is the answer. Now, could it be that a country adopts it entirely as it's like, I live in the Cayman Islands and we essentially are pegged to the US dollar. It's a currency board, so it's essentially, it's a one for one. Could that happen? Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Less interesting than legal tender, because it's like, I can go around the Caribbean and use US dollars and most people will take them. Or I could go to Morocco and use euros and never have to.
That makes a lot of
dirham.
sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Everything is incredible. Look, we are in the metaverse now, you and I, right? This is a digital representation of you and a digital representation of me. We don't even know what computers each other are using, what networks are on. We know nothing, right? But this is the metaverse. We're digital, as if we were in a room. And 5 years ago, we'd have been in a room together to having to do this, and we'd have had to have camera people in the room, and it would have been a whole big convoluted thing. When am I coming to New York? When are you going to be there?
That's true.
That's all gone. So this is never going away. All of the digitization, and ARC has been a big proponent of this, the digitization of everything is happening, and software is eating the world. These are truisms now. And what I found very interesting conceptually is that everything that gets digitized trends towards zero in cost. And blockchain was an amazing breakthrough because it created digital scarcity that didn't exist. So kind of, if you think of it in that broadest possible framework, it now creates value within this new digital world. I just don't see how, let's say there's a kid in Vietnam who is really bright but has no money to be able to go to a school in the US. Well, the metaverse is going to change that. It's going to change the future of work, education, everything. So it will become a much larger part of our lives. I had a holy shit moment where we built this metaverse thing and the guy's like, yeah, it's ETH. I'm like, really? You don't charge in dollars? He goes, no. That struck me. And then obviously the NFT thing, it's clear that all of that. Now, does that stay that way? Who knows? But it's got a decent enough adoption now that ETH is the denominator for digital assets in the metaverse. Let's call it in the digital world. And again, I have no strong view that it continues to dominate. I think it's hard not to, but maybe it changes. Here's something I've been thinking, and just might have unlocked it just by talking to you about this. So we all grew up in towns, villages, social structures that were physical. Family, the state you live in, all of that, the university you went to, they're all community structures. And they're generally slightly tribal in nature. You come from this village versus this village, whatever it is. Then the internet comes. We're now a homogenous group of digital beings, and there's 5.5 billion of us online, shouting and screaming at each other randomly. So now we have no real affiliation. So we start to affiliate in groups of people who think similar. So we see this splintering of ideas on the internet, left, right, this, that, all of these things. But it feels that maybe NFTs are creating societal structures again that we can understand and feel comfortable in. So we're not all screaming at each other. Because generally speaking, where you live is a representation of who you are and the kinds of values that you may have. Sure, you may rebel and leave and whatever, but you know what I'm saying is it feels like humans really want this. The adoption of NFTs makes me feel that humans really want to feel a belonging in this new digital world because it's terrifying and it's huge and it's chaotic. I've spent a lot of time digging into social tokens, which I think are a big thing. And when I looked at it, I just thought, surely they're all social tokens. Because Bitcoin has yes, there's many different people, but it's a community, and this token binds that community and signals that you're part of that community. As does ETH, as do NFTs. And that was a big thing, is thinking actually they're all social tokens because they all are playing that role. Because people are saying, I choose this network over that network, or this selection of networks over that selection of networks. I will then defend the value of that network. Again, I'm not coming at this for philosophy, I'm coming at it for network effects. Ideals, principles, each person has their own. And that's fine. You can find your place, and that's great with this space. There's different places for different people with different philosophies. Overall, I just look at the whole space and say, well, if we can encompass everybody within this TAM, well, okay, that's really interesting to me. And over time, we'll switch around. And some networks won't grow as fast for periods of time because it's all social. My philosophy is different. My philosophy is this technology is going to change everything. And therefore, my investment is in the entire technology. And I'm fully cognizant of the base layer of money, the collateral money, all of the use cases of Bitcoin, the decentralization argument, but it's not everything.
No, for sure.
There are so many parts of this that we've never been given an opportunity. Why would I just look at one thing? That's my entire philosophy.